There we go. Okay, so the next question I've got, I don't even really have very much experience about this. How often do you think you should be updating your app, either with major features, small features, bug fixes?
Well, that depends on your app. For games, for most games, you actually have to update them that often, which is one of the nice things about making games, because people are used to a game comes out and it's like done. You might add a couple features here or there, or maybe just add some extra downloadable content, but that's it. Now, normal utility type apps, they're a completely different story. People have gotten completely used on the App Store to having constant updates for those things. And it's to the point where if you don't do updates on a regular basis, it will start hurting you in terms of reviews and sales. People be like, is this app still maintained? I haven't seen an update, in this many months. So I would say the minimum, if you have a utility type app, it should be updated at least once every 6 months. And that, to you guys, probably sounds like totally easy and no-brainer, but it becomes more complicated when you have more apps on the App Store. Because say you only have one app, no problem, you keep that up to date. But once you start getting 5 or 6 apps, and you want to do a new app too, because you're bored of working on the old apps, it becomes more complicated to keep them all maintained. So just keep in mind that when you do start making apps, it's not just you write the app and then you're done. There's always going to be that maintenance overhead along with it, as long as you want sales to keep going on for that app, of course.
That's great. Yeah, I've always had a problem with people emailing about updates and demanding updates, and it's been hard to justify. But I guess kind of a sub question of that: what should you hold off on large or make large releases, or should you do small increments?
It depends what your users really want. I think the most effective strategy for updates is to listen to your users, because they know what they want, often better than you do. So when they send you emails saying, oh, I want this, I want that, hear what people are asking for a lot, and if you do that, you will make them happy, and the happier they are, the more likely they are to refer to their friends. And one of the most effective methods of getting your app to sell is on the App Store with word of mouth. So keeping those guys happy and making them see, hey, I emailed the developer and they actually listened to me and put in a feature that I wanted, that makes customers very happy and likely to give you a good review or help you out in some way.
Okay. So the next question I've got is what version of the operating system and the device, where do you call it quits? Do you continue support down to the iPhone 2G, the iOS 3, 3.2, or do you force users to upgrade their operating system along with your app?
I used to be kind of paranoid about that, and so I'd always code for very old operating systems. But then a bunch of blog posts have come out in the past year or two showing that iOS users are really good at keeping their device up to date, if not the most recent version, the one right before that. So the blog article I was reading at the time, it said like 90% of the people or higher have the latest version of the OS installed, and that's even going to get easier now that they have over-the-air upgrades with iOS 5. So I would say don't waste your time supporting those older devices because the newer APIs, especially in iOS 4 and iOS 5, are so great that you're just going to slow down your development time worrying about those older devices. Like maybe once you get your first version out and you're like, maybe it's doing well, but maybe I could earn a little more money by supporting the older devices, you can go back and do that. But these days I just do it for the latest iOS 5 and higher, so I can use all the APIs that I want.
Could you give a simple example of something that one of the APIs in iOS 5 that you wouldn't be able to use in say 4 or less?
Yeah, for example, iOS 5 has built-in Twitter integration. It's as simple as like one line of code, pretty much. Where before you have to put in an entire library and spend a lot of time messing with it. So if I want the ability to send a tweet from my app, I'm going to use that built-in iOS 5 thing and not mess with an alternate solution for people who haven't upgraded. and just say in the app description it requires iOS 5, and you can specify that in the App Store that requires that as well.
Okay, cool. This is kind of a little bit of an off-topic question, but say you get started in iOS. Are you able to expand your skills to OS 10 to native Mac development pretty easily?
Yeah. So in Mac, for the Mac, you burn with Objective-C as well. So all that will carry over. You also use Xcode, so you're familiar with that will carry over. You're familiar with Apple and all ways of doing things like view controllers, delegates, all that stuff will carry over too. Now they on the Mac they use slightly different classes than you used to on iOS. So instead of UI view, they use NS view, and they use different controls than you used to on iOS. So that's where the majority of your learning time will be. And plus, there's different APIs that don't even exist on iOS on the Mac, and vice versa. But compared to anything else, like learning Mac if you know iOS is much easier than learning, say, Windows programming if you know iOS. So it does.
Cool. So something I've heard from developers before are, and I feel it's prevalent with iOS, is how do you get out of the UI kit look? Every app looking the same, the toolbars, the tab bars. How could, especially somebody starting off, how could you make your app look different?
That's actually another great example of something that just came out in iOS 5 that makes your life much easier. It used to be that you could customize controls in iOS by overriding the base classes and overriding their drawbacks to fill in your own implementation. But now Apple has realized that everybody wants their app to look different because, frankly, their default controls are very boring looking. So they built this new API called the UI Appearance API. And it makes it super easy to customize most of the built-in controls in iOS really easily. You just get some artwork, or say how you want your button to look, or how you want your sliders to work. And sometimes they need like a couple of pieces, like some of the controls are split into different pieces. And then you call these UI Appearance APIs to specify your new artwork and maybe some of the sizes and so on, and then your app is completely different. And if any of you guys are interested in that, on my website, RayWenderlich.com, there's a tutorial on that subject. It's called UI Appearance Customization. And it shows you a deep of what you're looking at, and then you can, just with a couple lines of code and some art, convert it into a code that you're looking at. So I would highly recommend all you guys, if you release your apps, to not use the default stuff, because it's so boring looking, and take that time to make it look better.
So we talked, that kind of leads into something we talked about tonight as far as doing the design. And you mentioned earlier about trying to save money and make it as efficient as possible. What is your opinion on hiring outside designers and talent to help you?
Yeah, that's even though you try to save money as much as possible when you're starting, spending money on artwork for your app is probably the best way you can spend your money, because one of the primary decision-making factors in people when they go to buy your app is how does it look. Especially your app icon, you got to have a really good-looking app icon that stands out. Your screenshots and the app description. Most people don't even read the text; they just scroll down to the screenshots and look at it. And if your app looks good from the screenshots, they're probably going to buy your app. So, as programmers, well, let me just speak for myself. I have no talent whatsoever when it comes to art, so if I try to do the art for my apps, it would be completely horrible. And I think for my first app, I did something, and it's pretty bad. I was lucky enough that my wife, I begged her to make the art for me until she finally gave in and made the art for me. But maybe you have from a wife who does it, and you have a friend who does that, and if you don't know anybody who's willing to help you, then it's good to definitely hire someone. There's some really good designers out there. If you've ever heard of this site Dribble, that's where all the best designers hang out. So you can go through there, see if you find someone you really like, and if you do, email them, say, hey, you want to help me with this app. Usually people will not do revenue shares. It's tempting to be like, well, I'll just give you 50%, but from the designer's point of view, they don't know you, they don't know am I going to actually make any money out of this? So it's better to actually pay them when you're starting. Maybe when you get more established, it's easier to get revenue deals going. But yeah, it's definitely worth the money to the designer to help you, because as programmers, we're not always the best in that ourselves.
So we all know Instagram bought for $1 billion. I think Instagram was, as far as I know, one of the first apps that came out, a large release that did not have a website before the app came out. I've seen a lot of people say that you need to have some sort of splash page or something to advertise a website, usually before you launch, to gain some sort of hype. It seems like Instagram may have changed that a little bit, but do you think that has changed, or do you think that's still necessary?
A website that helped get the buzz out early. There's sort of a couple different approaches to marketing out there. There's some people who say you should start marketing the day you begin developing. Just get a simple web page up there, start graphic development process, putting up screenshots, technical problems you come across, anything. Just get some content out there, start getting people just aware of what you're doing, because the theory is the more people hear about your app, the more likely it is when your app is out and then they see it on the App Store that they actually are to buy it. Then there's the Apple way of doing things where they just suddenly announce, guess what? It's also a new thing, and it's available today. Do you want to buy it? The thing about putting a web page out for when you're first getting started as a small indie developer type is it's really hard to get a lot of buzz, even if you do blog out where you're posting some things. You might get a bit, but I tend to think of being successful in the App Store is kind of a long haul type thing. You get your first app out there, and you get some customers, you make those customers happy, and then you make sure you have a mailing list, so or the ability for them to follow you on Twitter, something like that. So you have some way of maintaining your contact with those guys. Then you release your second app, and now you're known a little bit. You're not a nobody. You've had an app out before, you have some happy customers, and then you tell those customers through your mailing list or through Twitter, hey, guess what? We got something else. And it just kind of builds over time. And then it becomes more possible to get that good hype going on because you have more contacts and more customers.
Okay. So the last question I've got for you, which do you prefer, saving data locally or saving data in the cloud?
Honestly, if you can save your data in the cloud, your customers are going to be a lot happier. It's just a trade-off of development time. So if you have the time to do it and you think it's a feature that's going to make your customers happy, I'd say definitely go with iCloud. My wife tells me that when she downloads an app these days and if it doesn't save on the cloud, she's kind of mad, because she expects that every app should have that. I don't think customers really realize the time it takes to do that. And of course, for iCloud integration depends on what you're doing. If you're saving a small little bit of data, like for example, what level the user's unlocked in your game or some settings, that's trivial, really easy, so you should definitely do iCloud. It's a little more complicated when you're dealing with larger data sets, but most of the time it's probably still worth it these days.
Sorry. Well, cool. So as far as saving data in the cloud, the two services that I'm familiar with, I don't have any experience with iCloud, but there's obviously that, and one that I've been using frequently is Parse. Is there anything else that you would recommend, or building your own web service to handle data?
Yeah, there were a lot of ones like that, like Parse. I have a list right over here. There's Parse, StackMob, Massive, Apokista, DataKit, Parsit, Kinby, and Cloud9. So there's tons of options out there when it comes to third-party companies who will help you make a web service a lot faster and easier than you could do on your own. Personally, I haven't really looked into those, so I can't really comment on which is better than others, but in general, I've heard a lot of people say that, you know, even if you do know how to make your own web service, that can save a lot of time to do that, and they would do it anyway. I have written my own stuff from time to time, but that was mainly because I wanted to learn how to do it, even though these other things. And iCloud, though, iCloud is good for sharing documents between different devices of your own. It's not the same as like Parse, because Parse is, the data is out there on a central database, and you can share data between users. Remember, iCloud data is only yourself. You can share data between yourself, but you can't see anybody else's iCloud data.
Okay.
So it kind of depends what you want to do there. There's also Dropbox, but a lot of developers used to use Dropbox as a way to synchronize files, but I don't really recommend that anymore now that iCloud's out. And plus, Apple's done some. I've heard some stories about people being rejected for using Dropbox to synchronize files these days because I guess Apple wants people to use iCloud. So I would probably say stay away from Dropbox. But any of those cloud is great. If you want to roll your own as a kind of learning experience or just a little more flexibility, that's cool too.
Cool. So, I mean, you guys, does anybody have any questions for Ray as far as getting started or any specific things?
I was going to ask, what kind of, you kind of touched on it earlier, what kind of version control system do you use?
I use Git. I think most other iPhone developers use Git as well because it's built in Xcode and there's GitHub, which is a great way to share code with others and it's just so easy to use. I would say probably 90% of iPhone developers use Git.
That, another question was, what kind of APIs are you hoping for Apple to bring out with iOS 6 or maybe even farther in the future?
What APIs am I looking for in iOS 6? Good question. Maybe I would like them to extend that Twitter API they have right now and make Twitter so we can make Facebook pretty much as easy. That would be nice. What else? iCloud integration right now is kind of a pain in the butt. At least with the UI document stuff that I'm using for my apps, I would like if they made that a little easier to develop somehow. With controls, it would be nice if they had a grid view control, kind of like the dashboard in iOS where you have all the icons and you can tap on them and make them wiggle and click the X to delete. Cool if there was a built-in control for that. I can use that for a lot of apps. Right now I'm using a highly customized third-party control for that. Some additional customization options to some of the UI controls would be nice. Like I was mentioning earlier, they just added that new API to customize things, but there's certain things that aren't really customizable that I don't know. There's one control in particular, it's a picker view. You scroll, it's kind of like a wheel that you scroll, kind of like a roulette wheel, and it's an item. That's not really customizable right now. I would like maybe a smaller version of that, or some additional controls don't even exist right now. Would be nice. But I'm sure when iOS 6 comes out, there will be tons of surprises that everybody's all coming in. I'll be able to imagine life without them.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Kind of question I had was, with there being like so many APIs and frameworks out there, and like they keep adding more and more every year, a big problem like I sometimes have is doing something the hard way and then not realizing until after the fact that there's like a framework or something that can just take care of that for me. What's like an easy way to get like a good overview of like all the different types of things you can do easily with iOS?
Well, I'll tell you what I did, and then I tell you once you get up to speed what I recommend doing going forward. What I did was I read. I started when the iOS 3 was out, so I read a book called Beginning iPhone Building by Jeff LaMarche, which was a great book. I really recommend it. I'm not sure if he's updated it all the way up to iOS 5 or not yet, but I'm guessing he probably did. And then, sort of as the releases came out, I just followed blogs and keep up to date. And then when iOS 5 came out, myself and a bunch of other guys wrote this book called iOS 5 by Tutorials, where, like you said, there was just so many APIs. It was crazy. So the reason we wrote the book is honestly because we wanted to divide and conquer. We each would figure out how something worked and write out how it worked, and then we read it and learn everything really easy, and then we manage the books so everybody else could benefit from that too. So I guess, reading some books, getting to speed with what there is now, and then once you're up to speed with what there is now, it's really important to read some developer blogs, because that really helps you stay in the loop of what's going on. And iOS community is awesome. People are really open and willing to share with other people. And so on some communities where they kind of guard knowledge, it's a lot more open than iOS. So people will tell you there's a really cool third-party library available that you should check out, or a new book came out that's really worth reading, or here's a new technique of using this API, or here's a tutorial on this API. So I recommend getting a newsreader set up at least per week, check what's going on the blogs, and just keep your skills up to date, and that'll help you a lot.
Awesome. Anybody else?
I was just kind of curious, what apps have you made yourself?
I have made Level Me Up, which is kind of a skill tracking thing to see how far, if you were to the 10,000 hour rule, you work on something 10,000 hours, you're supposed to be an expert.
Yep.
So it's a tool to help you track that. Instant Poetry is kind of like magnetic poetry for the iPhone. Math Ninja, it's an educational game for kids. Wild Fables, it's an interactive ebook with CocoaStudio and game physics in there. And Battle Map, which is a tool for Dungeons & Dragons role-playing games like myself. We build maps and put them on projectors and play online and all that stuff. So I think that's it.
Cool. Awesome.
As an app developer, is there any advantage in trying to support two platforms, for instance, both iPhone and Android? Does that end up becoming a lot to juggle when you're first starting out?
I've thought many times about, learning Android and putting some apps over there. But every time I look into it, everybody who I know who's tried to do that just does not make money on Android. I'm talking about, like, if your app earns $100 a day on iPhone, you might earn like $5 a day at most on Android. It's pretty ridiculous. iOS is where all the money's at. And everybody I know who's ported their apps to Android has regretted it, because the time they spent doing that, they could have spent making another app for iOS, where they actually made money. I think the culture of Android users is everybody wants things for free. They don't realize that developers need money to pay the bills so they can make apps. I think the things that work best on Android is if you have a really, really popular app, like top 100 level, then even though you're not maybe earning much money, it's still a decent chunk worth of time. But for a niche app or app in the top 100 category, but maybe not top 100 overall, it might not make as much sense. So personally, I haven't spent any time really on Android except for just the very basics.
Cool. Well, I think that is about it. I just want to thank you for taking time and talking to us, answering our questions. It's good. I think these guys are gearing up to go and make some apps. So.
Cool. Well, good luck, guys. And if any of you ever have any questions, just feel free to drop me an email anytime.
Thanks a lot, Ray.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.